Welcome to another edition of Dollars and Cents here on the Latent Media Podcast Network. Altra Federal Credit Union Fraud Manager Crystal Clark is our guest today. And we are talking about scams and fraud, what we can do to protect ourselves, what kind of fraud and scams are out there that are most prevalent right now, right, Crystal? Because, I mean, we see this all the time. I think any of us who have email or are on social media, get text messages, we get these all the time, right? They seem to come just fast and furious. And, you know, even for somebody who I think is pretty good at sniffing these out, sometimes you take a second glance and you're like, wait, is that real? You know, it's like it's getting pretty sophisticated the way that this is being done. So what are some of the scams and fraud out there right now that we should be aware of, and which ones are you seeing an uptick in?
Sure. Yep. So we'll just kind of start with the one that probably everyone has seen so far, right? Is texts from the DMV or from tollways saying that you owe fees. I feel like everyone and their mother has received this text, but unfortunately people are still falling for it. So I just want to put that out there, that it is something that is prevalent right now. Essentially what it is you'll receive a text message from a DMV or a tollway service saying you owe fees. There's final notices or traffic violations, and they ask you to click on a link to pay for that so that you don't, there's no repercussions to it. So this, obviously, a lot of people might look at this and think, oh, this is a scam, straightforward. But it does have all the classic signs of a scam, and you just need to stop and think about it and realize it. And the way that I like to explain that is to evaluate any unexpected communication. That's the first step. Is it unexpected? Were you expecting this? If you had some sort of a traffic violation, you would have been notified that of it at the time. The second thing is there urgency to the message? So if they are saying you have to pay XYZ fee within a certain amount of time, or there'll be repercussions to that, they're creating that sense of urgency so that you act without thinking. And the third thing is a sense of heightened emotion, right? So that's going to either be reward or threat. So either if you act quickly, something good will happen, or if you act quickly or something bad will happen. This type of text scam has all those classic signs of fraud. So it's always just taking a moment to evaluate the communications you're receiving. And if they fit those, then make sure that you're stopping and evaluating those communications and validating them. So things to protect yourself in any type of scam, text scam, is don't click on any suspicious links. Never share your personal information via text or email. And if you get something unexpected, make sure to authenticate that with whoever sent it. So, for example, in this case with the DMV, you could go directly to their website, and you'll see on their website all the examples of those fraudulent texts. In addition, the DMV is never going to reach out to you via text. So just something to be aware of, because it's really prevalent at the moment.
And you say urgency, you mentioned that a few times. I think a lot of these, you know, urgency also equals fear, right? I mean, they're playing on people being worried about having an outstanding debt or something like that, you know, getting into a financial problem. And so that's really what a lot of these scammers are playing on, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that is something that is very effective, unfortunately, for people. And I think another thing, Crystal, is I think nowadays it's difficult because a lot of the communication we do, even, you know, legitimate communication with an entity like the DMV or something like that, many times we are not talking to an actual person ever, right? A lot of it is either over email or whatever it might be. And so then it makes it almost more challenging for us to verify something like this by actually connecting with another human being and having somebody tell us, no, you really do have an outstanding fine, or you don't, or something like that. So I think that's another advantage that scammers have nowadays, right?
100%. Yep. You always have to just take that step back and understand that you have all the power in any sort of communication. Even if it is a over the phone communication, you can absolutely stop any person and say, I'm not comfortable with this. I need to verify it to be legitimate, and then look up the actual contact information for that company, business, government site, whatever it may be. and then contact them directly to verify the legitimacy. I think people in those moments, because of exactly like the threat that you mentioned, the fear, they feel powerless, but we want to make sure that people understand you have the power. You have the power to stop and say, I need to verify this.
Yeah. I think it's great advice what you say. Just take a step back and just say, okay, I need to think about this. If you wait an hour or two or even a day, it's not like collections is going to show up at your door or something like that. So yeah, right. Just take your time. Crystal Clark is our guest. She is a fraud manager at Altra Federal Credit Union. We're talking about fraud and scams and what you can do to protect yourself, how you can recognize these fraudsters before they get you. My family and I this summer took a trip where we went on some tollways. And so I actually do have the Illinois Tollway Authority or whatever it is emailing me about my payment. And so then I'm also at the same time getting these scam messages, and I'm like, wait, I actually do have legitimate tolls I have to pay, but then sorting through all the ones that were scams too. And I was just like, that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit too. So that made it even more complicated. But I will say the ones that were legitimate did stand out. If you really looked at them, it was pretty easy. If you took a step back and just took a deep breath, it was easy to see which ones were the scams or not. So that's the important part. Moving on to impersonator financial websites. In your notes that you gave me, Crystal, you said, obviously searching online for businesses or organizations, we all do that almost every day. We Google it, we do whatever, we're online with that kind of thing. But that is also, or can also be, an open door for scammers.
Correct. Yes. Bad actors nowadays take advantage of creating fake websites and also utilizing the sponsored ads that they have on browsers. So you can just pay, for example, Google, to promote your website. Google is not necessarily vetting that site is correct. You're just paying for it to be promoted at the very top. So when you just do a browser search, if you're not doing certain steps to verify the legitimacy of that site, you could be clicking on a fake website and potentially entering your personal or financial information that could lead to compromise, account takeover, or potentially fraudulent purchases. Mm-hmm. So there's a variety of things that you can do and best practices when you're looking up companies online, because obviously we all have to do it. But one thing obviously is to avoid those sponsored ads. I honestly, when I do a browser search, I will skip through the sponsored ads and
I
go
do the same thing. Yep.
Straight to the regular websites. Mm-hmm. You'll also want to look for verified logos. So companies can register their sites, and when they do that, then they will show the logo in front of the link to click on for that. So look for those sponsored or those logo or branding next to those search links.
Okay.
The best thing to do is, if it's a site that you go to regularly, bookmark it. So especially for things like your financial site, it's a place that you need to go on to log onto your online banking all the time. Just bookmark it, and then you never have to browse or search for it again, so that you know that you're going to the correct site every time. If it's not a site that you go to normally, make sure that you are verifying the web address when you're looking at that. It might say, XYZ Bank, but when you click into it, maybe it'll say XYZ Photography at the top, right? You might notice when you click into something that the URL doesn't look right. And if it doesn't look right, back out of it. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you do detect any suspicious websites, make sure to contact that company and let them know. A lot of those companies work with carriers to get those sites taken down. Okay.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. When you are searching for something through Google and you do get those sponsored websites that usually come up at the top of a search, by just clicking on those, can that be detrimental? Or if you just click on it, you're probably still okay, right? It's only if you are taken to that website and then you provide some kind of information.
It all depends on what links you're clicking on. So okay. I'm not going to give a definitive answer on necessarily anything. If you get potentially a link texted to you and you click on that link, it might download suspicious or malware or viruses onto your device. So you want to be really careful about that.
Right.
A lot of these like for example, impersonator financial sites typically what they're doing, they're not necessarily infecting your device, but they're enticing you to put in your credentials
Sure.
and verify your personal information, which they then steal and use for identity theft or account takeover.
Yeah.
So it can be a variety of different things that they're after.
Yeah.
It all depends on the situation.
Certainly if it's texted to you and you click on the link, that's a really bad idea. But
Yes.
if you have initiated the search through Google or something like that, you might have, again, like you said, no hard and fast rules, but you might have a little more leeway before you are really getting suckered into that scam.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, kind of in relation to, impersonator websites and that kind of thing, artificial intelligence, AI, I mean, it's just everywhere nowadays, right? It's all we hear about. Some people say it's great. Other people say it's going to be the end of humanity as we know it. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, scammers and fraudsters are opportunists. They take advantage of everything they possibly can to get us. And so they are using AI as an effective way to do scams, to do fraud, to impersonate people even. So it is scary what they are doing. What can people do to protect themselves?
Absolutely. Yep. And you're 100% correct. AI, there's a lot of great uses for it, but those great uses, the bad actors also use those to their benefit as well. So there's a multitude of ways that scammers use AI to their benefit. Deepfakes are a big thing right now. Obviously, I think a lot of people have heard about them. It impacts things that you see in the news, what's real news and what's not real news. But bad actors can use those for scams as well and create deepfakes of potentially people that you might know or impersonating businesses that you deal with. So it only takes a couple of seconds for them to capture audio or video to create a realistic deep fake. And that can mimic a person's physical appearance and voice almost perfectly. That includes their tone, their accent, their speech patterns. All of that can be mimicked with deep fakes. And it makes it incredibly hard then to tell what's real and what isn't. Bad actors can then take that and do things like family emergency scams, preying on the elderly, right? So maybe a grandma gets a call from their grandson and says, I've been in an accident, I'm in jail, I need money. That's not a new thing, right?
No. Yep.
But with the changes with AI and deep fakes, that all of a sudden becomes way more realistic.
Yeah.
And it can actually sound like your grandson.
Right.
So it just makes that much harder to detect. It can also impact the communications that you receive. So emails or texts. Previously, what did everybody tell you about if you got an email, right? That might be a scam. Look for spelling mistakes. Look for language. It doesn't flow right. Look for grammatical errors. AI can solve all those problems for the bad actors. They can create communications now very easily that have none of those signs and sound very realistic and mimic what you would normally receive from a company or a business.
Right. Yeah. And, I think, again, this is another situation where they are playing on the emotions, right? They're creating that sense of, despair or urgency or fear or whatever it might be, especially in the example you gave. And I don't know the AI technology very well, but I wonder, would it be advantageous, if I'm the person that receives that call that a loved one of mine is in need of help, needs money, can I ask questions back to whatever that AI device is in order to do some kind of a verification that way? Or is AI so sophisticated that it would be able to answer those questions in the mimicked voice that they're using? Do you know?
It depends how much information the AI has about the individual that they're mimicking, right? Yeah. I would say the best method is always, if you're unsure, if it's, again, we're going through our scam detection, right?
Yeah.
Is it unexpected? Is there heightened emotions? And is there urgency to what's happening, right?
Yeah.
If it is, take a step back and then verify it directly with the person, right? So if it is your grandson calling you, hang up and call your grandson.
Right.
Call anyone in your family who would know where this person is physically present.
Yeah.
If it's a business, hang up and call that business. That's the best way, is to get out of that interaction and then verify it out of band through legitimate sources.
Right. Yeah. And then you're taking it into your control, right? You are taking control of that situation. But look, like we said, these scammers are not dummies. And I think, if you get a call from a loved one who seems to be in despair, there is urgency because you think the urgency is legitimate and you don't want to say, hey, I'm going to hang up and call you right back, right? When the person seems in need. So I think, again, it's one of those situations where you almost have to take emotion out of it, step back and say, okay, not sure about this, and trust your instincts, right? If it feels weird, it probably is. There's always that thing, if it seems too good to be true, then it probably is. It's the same thing here. If it feels weird, it maybe is. And so, yeah, if your spidey sense is going off, so to speak, then step back from that.
And this is where it's also really important to educate your loved ones about it as well, especially the elderly population. Make sure that they're aware of, the changes and the types of scams that are out there so they can identify it when they see it fall in their lap. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And obviously elderly people overall more susceptible to this just because they're not as comfortable with technology, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads well into the amount of information that we put out there online. I mean, a lot of us do so much stuff online. The majority of a lot of our financial stuff is online. We're all on social media. And to be honest, we probably put information out there just without even thinking about it now, and it's just kind of, unfortunately, I think we have to do that, in order to just exist in the digital world that we live in now. But you also have to take those precautions and think about what you're putting out there, and kind of minimize what you have to put out there in order to still live your life, right?
Right. 100%. It's always about evaluating what you're putting out there. Is it essential for whatever app or account that you're putting it into to have that information? Is it necessary for them to have that? So definitely consider the things that you definitely have control over are privacy settings and what you're sharing, especially on social media. So make sure you're limiting what you share, and consider making those social media accounts shared with only your friends instead of making them public. So private instead of public. Make sure you're also thinking about what you're putting out there. So if you're on, let's say, Facebook, and you've linked your school that you went to school at and your employer and all of this other information, that can actually be gathered by fraudsters and bad actors and used against you to make communication seem more convincing. So just consider limiting what you're putting out there.
Because it seems like they know you then, right? When they contact you.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing that I just want to put a plug in for is there is also open source information that just gathers information about you, from various accounts, sites, governmental information that they can gather on you. I would encourage everybody to Google themselves and see what comes up, right? You'd be surprised at the amount of open source information that you might be able to find on yourself. There is one site that I just want to point out, the National Public Data website has just been reintroduced under new ownership. I'm not sure if that name is familiar to you, but National Public Data was responsible for one of the largest data breaches in history. They leaked 2.9 billion records in 2024. So you may have seen them in the news. But they are under new ownership, and they have a public site that lists, collects and lists information. So that can include name, age, historical addresses, email, phone numbers, even relatives, neighbors, or associated individuals. So I, look at those type of sites, see what's available out there, and opt out. Like, for example, this website, you can go in and search yourself. And if you find a profile for yourself, you can go in and opt out of that to take your information off. So I would just recommend, as a whole, going out, seeing what you can find and seeing what you can opt out of, because then people can't utilize that information against you.
So they gather data on whoever they can, and then they sell it?
They put it out there for, right now it's public. It's all public use.
Okay.
I'm sure they sell ads and different things to create revenue and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yes.
How is that legal?
It's all open source information, right?
It's out there anyway.
Yeah.
So all they are considering themselves is like just an umbrella to kind of gather all
to
that.
make it easy to find all of this information all in one place.
that feels like they know it's going to be used or could be used for nefarious circumstances, but but they're in a gray area there, I suppose. Okay. And that is nationalpublicdata.com is the website. And if you want to opt out, you can go to nationalpublicdata.com/opt-out, and that'll get you there. And then you can do that. But it's a good idea to, like you said, search yourself on Google and just see what's out there. Because I think even some of us who maybe aren't that active on social media or don't think we put a lot of information out there, we do put out more than we really think, And I'm always amazed, like if I'm on my home computer and I search for something, like say I'm searching for, I don't know, new golf clubs or something like that. If I search for that, everybody connected to me in my immediate family then starts getting ads for golf clubs, and it happens almost instantly. It's amazing, and it's super scary at the same time. So there's that. One thing, follow-up I have on that though, Crystal, is with putting your information out there or searching for things or whatever, is it better if you are limiting the amount of machines or devices that you search on? Like if you're limiting it to just a home computer and your phone or something like that, is that better? Is it more risky if you put it out on multiple devices?
I'm not sure that necessarily makes an impact.
Okay.
In the background, there's a lot of things running to fingerprint individuals and to know whose device is connected to who. So,
okay.
Yeah. I would say, if you're searching it, it probably doesn't matter if you're just searching to one device or all devices. They're all connected.
You're still leaving a footprint out there, probably no matter what. Yeah. Okay. Last but not least, and continuing along the way of protecting ourselves, Crystal Clark is our guest. She's a fraud manager with Altra Federal Credit Union. You are with the Dollars and Cents podcast here on the Latent Media Podcast Network. MFAs, or multi-factor authentication, is something that I think a lot of us are familiar with. Now, a lot of websites we go to require this, right? You'll have a username and a password, then they'll ask you for an additional, like they'll send you a text message code or something like this. I know this is a great thing. I got to be honest though, sometimes I'm sitting at my computer and I don't have my phone and you log into something, right? And then you hear your phone beep and I'm just like, got to get up and get my phone. But I know it's a good thing, and I know it is advantageous for all of us to protect ourselves. But several different MFAs out there. Mm-hmm. Are they all created equal?
No, they are not all created equal. There are definitely some that are better than others. I will say having any sort of MFA, multi-factor authentication, is better than having none. Mm-hmm. So while you mentioned that some sites are now requiring it, right? Not every site does. Some of it requires registration. So make sure that with any account that you're setting up with any sort of credentials, look at your security, go to the settings and look at the security options. A lot of those you can set up MFA, but it's a choice. So, your email, your shopping accounts, make sure to go into Amazon and, register for multi-factor authentication, your social media sites, and especially your financial accounts. Those are the most important. But yes, there are different levels of security with multi-factor authentication. And the best option is to adopt the most secure option available that works for you. So the least secure options right now are the one-time passcodes that you're talking about. So the ones that are sent via email or text or sometimes digital voice call, those are the least secure. Email by far the least secure, because your credentials could be compromised, and that's all it takes to get that one-time passcode.
Okay.
SMS text is a little more secure than email because obviously it's sent, to your phone. But any phone number can be SIM swapped with the assistance of a phone provider.
Sure.
That actor could call up your phone provider, impersonating you with enough information, and have them do a SIM swap. So those text messages and those voice calls are sent to a different device. The more secure options that I would encourage you to explore and adopt are going to be authenticator apps. So a lot of people have seen those already, especially with work, but like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, you've probably heard of those.
Yep.
Those apps provide OTP push notifications, but they're linked to your device. So a SIM swap could happen and it's not going to move to that new device. That's what makes it more secure. It's less secure than biometrics or pass keys because you can still be phished for the code,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Social engineering is a big problem. A lot of people are talked into giving out those either credentials or codes. So that could still happen with an authenticator app, but at least it couldn't be a takeover like a SIM swap.
Okay.
The more secure methods are going to be your biometrics and especially your passkeys. Passkeys right now are kind of the most secure form of MFA because they use phish-resistant cryptographic keys. So there's a private key on your device and there's a public key that links to that account. It's not as phishable because you're using your device to log in directly to it. So it's not like a code that you give to someone. You're using, typically it's like a QR code that comes up that you'll do on your device. So
interesting.
It has that phishing resistance that the authenticator apps don't necessarily have.
And that's something that you would have to do every time you were logging into a certain website or something like that, or would it be?
Depends on the site and what you're doing on the site. So and how you have it set up, right? You might set it up that you want it to have MFA every time that you log in.
Sure.
Or it might be if you're taking certain actions on certain things. So it depends on what you're logging into and what the security measures are around the activity you're doing.
Sure. And sometimes we will get the notification, they will ask for an MFA and they'll give you the choice, right? Text message, email, maybe some of these other options come up as well? I mean, obviously that will depend on the site or the organization as well. Yes. But if it does, you want to pick some of these biometrics or passkeys, right?
Yes,
don't pick the text, don't pick the email. If you want to be as safe as possible, pick one of these other options.
Yep. It'll take a little bit of, registration, maybe downloading an app to start off with. But it's usually super easy. And honestly, it's usually easier than using the old methods of authentication. So definitely if you see those, gravitate towards those more secure options. And then a lot of times the places that have the more secure options, you can turn off the less secure options. So then your account is less likely to be taken over.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Fascinating. Great stuff. Crystal, thank you so much. We will have to leave it there. Anything that people want to know, they can reach out to you guys, right? What is the best way to get in touch with you guys, Crystal?
Correct. You can reach out to Altra at our 800 number. That's 800-755-0055. We have a whole fraud department. So you can just ask to speak with someone and we'd be happy to talk to you.
All right, perfect. That is Crystal Clark. She's a fraud manager at Altra Federal Credit Union, joining us here on the Dollars and Cents podcast on the Latent Media Podcast Network. We hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you next time.